Dr. Night Echoes.
Before this video starts, just know this. Some of these stories should not be told. People who experienced them still refuse to talk about what really happened because what they saw wasn't human. A doll that moves when no one's there. A road where something waits in the dark. An entire town that feels completely wrong the moment you enter it. These aren't just creepy stories, they're warnings. So if you're alone right now, you might want to keep the lights on, because once you hear this, you won't unhear it. This is Dr. Night Echoes. I worked at the morgue during my summer break from college. It was a quiet job that paid well. One night, I was working the late shift, all by myself. The building was very still and very cold. I had just finished cleaning a metal table in the prep room. Suddenly, a loud bang came from the cold storage area. It sounded like a heavy metal tray hitting a wall. I walked into the freezer to see what fell. Everything looked normal. All the body drawers were closed and locked. I turned around to leave the room. Right then, I felt a heavy pressure on my shoulder. I heard a very loud, wet sound right against my ear. It sounded like someone was trying to breathe through a throat full of liquid. It was a deep, rattling noise that made my skin crawl. I could even feel a damp warmth on my neck. I spun around quickly, but the room was empty. There was nobody there. I ran back toward the prep room, but the heavy steel door was shut. I had left it wide open with a doorstop. I pulled the handle as hard as I could, but it was locked from the inside. I was trapped in the cold with the bodies. I had to use the wall phone to call for help. When security came, they checked the cameras. They saw the heavy door slam shut with incredible force. There was no one near it. To this day, I still feel that wet breath on my neck. My best friend and I went to an old hospital at the edge of town. It was late at night, and the building was very dark. We carried flashlights and walked slowly through the halls. We went up to the third floor, where the doctors used to work. We found a metal table in the middle of a large room. It was bolted to the floor and covered in rust. Suddenly, my friend's light started to flicker. We heard a loud noise of metal scraping on the floor. The sound came from the corner of the room. We pointed our lights toward the noise. A man was sitting in a chair. He wore a dirty white coat. When he looked up, I felt very scared. He had no eyes and no mouth. His face was just smooth, flat skin. The man stood up. He moved toward us with strange, jerky steps. He looked like a doll that was falling apart. We did not wait. We turned and ran as fast as we could. We did not stop until we reached my car. I drove away, and my hands were shaking. When we got home, my friend stopped walking. He looked at the back of my jacket. There was a black handprint made of soot right between my shoulders. I never felt anyone touch me.
My friend and I were driving through the woods in West Virginia late at night. The road was very narrow and dark. There were tall trees on both sides of us. Suddenly, my headlights hit something in the middle of the road. It looked like a person sitting on the ground, but the shape was wrong. The arms and legs were much too long. As we got closer, the thing stood up. It was very tall, maybe 7 feet or more. Its skin was a pale, sickly gray color. I looked at its head and felt sick. It had no eyes and no nose. There was only a wide, flat mouth with no lips. It did not run away. It just took one long step into the dark woods and disappeared.
We did not speak for a long time. We were both too scared to say anything. We drove for 20 miles until we found a gas station with bright lights. I parked the car, and my hands were shaking. My friend finally looked at me. His face was very white. He asked if I saw how long the arms were. I just nodded my head. We never drove on that road again. I still think about that gray skin every time I drive at night.
I was driving home on a dark back road after a late shift. The moon was very bright and full. I could see the cornfields on both sides of the road. I saw a tall figure standing in the middle of a field. It was just standing there, watching the road. As my car got closer, I saw that it was not a person. It was much too tall. Its arms were very long and reached all the way down to its knees. The thing was wearing an old, torn suit. It looked like a suit from a very long time ago. It did not have any eyes. There were just two glowing red holes in its head. I felt a deep chill in my chest. As my car drove past the field, the thing tilted its head to the side. It opened its mouth and smiled at me. I saw rows of very sharp teeth that looked like needles. I pushed the gas pedal to the floor as hard as I could. I did not look in the mirror until I pulled into my driveway and locked my car doors. My heart was beating very fast. I stayed in my car for a long time before running inside. To this day, I will not drive on that road after the sun goes down. I can still see those red eyes in the dark. Many years ago, I lived in a big, old house with 3 floors. We turned a room on the middle floor into an office. I used to work late at night to finish financial reports. My son was only 3 years old at the time. He spent the evening playing on one of the computers in the office while I worked. Around 9 at night, he fell asleep in his chair. I turned off his monitor and carried him to his bed. I turned off the light and left the room. For the next few hours, I sat in the living room and watched TV with my wife. She went to bed at 11, and I decided to go to sleep an hour later. I remembered that I left a window open in the office. I went back into the room to close it. The office was very dark. I did not turn on the light because I knew where the window was. As I walked toward the window, I saw a faint glow. It was coming from the computer my son had used earlier. The monitor was on, but the screen was mostly black. In the middle of the screen, there was one single word in bright white letters. The word was watching. My son was only a toddler. He did not know how to spell or type. I checked the computer's history that night. No websites had been visited. No programs had been opened. The word was just sitting there on the screen in the dark. My family bought a top-floor apartment when I was in high school. The price was very low. We found out the owner was a music man who went missing. His body was found months later. He had been hurt and shot many times. It was very sad. We bought the place from his mother. My stepdad and I went there every day to fix the walls. I always felt like someone was watching me. One day, my stepdad went to the car to get tools. I was all alone. I looked down the long hallway toward the big bedroom. I saw a bright white shape appear. It looked like a person. It walked from one side of the room to the other. It stopped in the middle and turned its head. It looked right at me. I could not move. It did not feel evil, but I was very scared. It looked at me for a few seconds. Then it walked away and vanished. I ran to the elevator as fast as I could. It was the middle of the day. The sun was out, so I know what I saw. My stepdad laughed at me. A few days later, we found an old notebook in a closet. It had poems and drawings from the dead man. My mom wanted to give it to his mother.
My stepdad was mean and threw it in the trash. After that, scary things started. Lights turned on and off. Windows we closed were now wide open.
I am Navajo. Back in the early 1990s, a white man moved to my small town to teach at the local school. He did not know our ways or the things that hide in the dark. A skinwalker began to haunt him every single night. It would scratch at his windows and howl in the yard. One night, the teacher reached his breaking point. He waited in the shadows of his porch. When the creature crept close, the man jumped out and grabbed it. He was very strong and full of rage. He wrapped his hands around its neck and choked the skinwalker until it stopped moving. The paramedics came quickly, but they would not get close to the body. They stood back with a look of pure fear on their faces. The dead man was not just a man. He was covered in layers of old, rotting animal skins that seemed to be stuck to his flesh. The smell was like dead meat left in the sun for weeks. It was a smell that stayed in your clothes and your hair. My people say you must be very careful with your things. You should never leave your hair, your nails, or your old clothes where others can find them. If a witch or a skinwalker gets a piece of you, they own you. They can use those items to make you very sick. They can bring bad luck to your home, or even cause you to die. You must watch your back at all times. My friend and I were driving through the deep woods of West Virginia. It was very late, and the road was narrow. Trees leaned over the pavement from both sides. Suddenly, my headlights hit something in the middle of our path. It looked like a person sitting low on the ground, but the shape of the body was not right. The arms and legs were way too long and thin. As the car got closer, the thing stood up on the road. It was very tall. It must have been at least 7 feet. Its skin was a pale, sickly gray color like a dead fish. I looked at its head and my heart stopped. It had no face at all. There were no eyes and no nose. There was only a wide mouth with no lips that stretched across its head. The thing did not run away from our car. It just took one very long step into the thick trees and vanished into the dark. We did not say a single word to each other for a long time. We were both too terrified to speak. We drove for 20 miles until we saw the bright lights of a gas station. I parked the car and my hands were shaking on the wheel. My friend finally looked at me. His face was very white. He asked me if I saw how long the arms were. I just nodded my head. We never drove on that road again. When I was 7 years old, I stayed at my grandmother's house. It was a very old place with high ceilings and a long, dark hallway. One night, I was lying in bed with the door open just a little bit. I saw a woman walk past my room. She was wearing a long, white nightgown and had very long, dark hair. I thought the woman was my mom. I jumped out of bed and followed her into the kitchen to say hello. When I got to the kitchen, the room was empty and cold. I looked over and saw that the back door was standing wide open. I was confused, so I walked to my parents' room. I opened their door and saw that they were both sound asleep. My mom was wearing blue pajamas, not a white gown. I felt a chill run down my back. I went back to my bed and stayed under the covers. The next morning, I told my grandmother what I had seen in the hallway. She got very quiet, and her face turned pale. She sat me down and told me a secret. She had a sister who died in that house many years before I was born. On the night she died, she was wearing her favorite white nightgown. My grandmother said her sister never really left the house. I never wanted to stay in that hallway alone again.
I still remember the way that white gown moved in the dark.
I used to work in a very large warehouse. It was late at night, and I was the only woman working on the second shift. A truck driver sat in the waiting area and waved for me to come over. I thought he was lost or needed to find the restroom. I walked up to him to be helpful. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. He pulled me toward his face with a lot of force. He looked me right in the eyes and spoke in a low voice. He said, "You came this far for free. What would you do for a quarter?" I tried to pull away, but he held me so tight that it hurt. I was trapped. I felt a cold fear run through my whole body. I finally broke free and ran to find my boss. I told him what happened and showed him my arm. The man had gripped me so hard that he left dark bruises on my skin. My boss was very angry. I hid behind a large crate and heard him yelling at the driver to get out and never come back. The other men at work were very protective of me after that. 6 months later, I saw a story on the news. A truck driver had been arrested for being a serial killer. He had hurt many people. I looked at the picture on the screen and felt sick to my stomach. I still wonder if that was the same man who held my wrist.
When I was 10 years old, my mom and I lived in a small apartment. One night, I woke up around 3 in the morning. My bedroom door was open just a little bit. I looked toward the door and saw a man standing there. He was very tall and wore a blue flannel shirt with old jeans. I could see him clearly because of the light in the hallway. He did not move at all. He just stood in the doorway and stared at me. I was so scared that I could not move my legs. I felt cold all over my body. I slowly pulled my blanket over my head. I stayed under the covers until the sun came up and the room was bright. That morning, I ran to the kitchen and told my mom what I saw. Her face turned very white. She told me that she woke up at the same time. She saw a man standing at the foot of her bed. He did not say anything. He just watched her sleep until she closed her eyes and prayed for him to leave. We moved out of that apartment 1 week later. After we left, we found out the truth about the place. The man who lived there before us had died by suicide in the living room. When the police found him, he was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. I still wonder why he was watching us that night. I have a condition called exploding head syndrome. It makes me hear giant noises in my head right as I fall asleep. Sometimes it sounds like a car crash or a bomb going off. It only happens when I am very tired. I have lived with this for a long time. I learned to just ignore the loud sounds and try to stay asleep. One day, the noises were very bad. I was getting very angry because I could not rest. Every time a loud bang woke me up, I would scream bad words at the top of my lungs. I was just yelling at the sounds in my head. That afternoon, I finally woke up for real. I walked to my kitchen and saw that my back door was wide open. Someone had kicked it in with a lot of force. I looked around my house, but nothing was missing. My TV and my money were still there. I lived in a dangerous part of town, so I had security cameras. I went to check the video to see what happened. On the video, I saw a man kick my door open. The second he stepped inside, I heard myself on the recording. I was in the other room screaming, "Not again!" at the top of my lungs. The burglar looked terrified. He thought I was talking to him. He turned around and bolted out the door as fast as he could. He never came back. My brain saved my life that day. The story of Annabelle began in 1970. A mother bought a large doll from a hobby store. She gave it to her daughter, Donna, who was a nursing student. Donna lived in a small apartment with her friend, Angie. At first, the doll seemed normal. Then, strange things started to happen.
The girls would leave the doll on the bed. When they came home, the doll was on the couch. Sometimes, the doll was standing up against a wall. They found small pieces of paper on the floor. The paper had messages written on it. The messages said, "Help us." The girls did not own any parchment paper. They became very scared. One night, they found blood on the doll's dress. They called a medium to help them. The medium said a young girl named Annabelle Higgins had died in the apartment. The girl's spirit wanted to stay with them. The girls felt sorry for her. They gave the spirit permission to stay. This was a big mistake. A friend named Lou stayed over one night. He woke up and could not move. He saw Annabelle crawling up his leg. Later, Lou felt a sharp pain in his chest. He had 7 claw marks on his skin. The marks burned like fire. The girls called Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were famous ghost hunters. They said the doll was not possessed by a girl. It was a demon. The demon wanted to take over a human body. The Warrens took the doll away. On the drive home, their car brakes failed. They almost died in a crash. They put the doll in a glass case. One man visited the museum and laughed at the doll. He died in a motorcycle crash shortly after leaving. In July 2025, a museum handler died suddenly after touching her case. Today, she stays in a locked box in Connecticut. People say she is a vessel for a dark demon. The curse is still very real. The story of Robert the Doll began in 1906. A young boy named Gene lived in a big house in Key West, Florida. A servant gave him a handmade doll as a gift. The doll was 3 feet tall and wore a white sailor suit. Gene loved the doll and named it Robert. He treated the doll like a real person. Soon, his parents heard Gene talking in his room. They heard a deep, strange voice answering him. They thought Gene was just playing a game. Then, things in the house began to break. Vases fell over and toys were torn apart. Gene always said, "Robert did it." Neighbors saw the doll moving past the windows while the family was out. They said the doll would peek out and then vanish. Gene's parents sometimes found the doll sitting in a different chair than where they left it. As Gene grew up, he never let the doll go. He even built a special room for Robert in the attic. When Gene died in 1974, a new family moved into the house. Their 10-year-old daughter found Robert in the attic. She was very happy at first. Soon, she started screaming in the middle of the night. She claimed the doll moved across her bed and tried to hurt her. She said the doll wanted to kill her. Robert was identified as a haunted object and moved to a museum in Florida. Many people believe a dark curse follows the doll. Visitors to the museum must be very careful. You must ask Robert for permission before you take his photo. If you do not ask, your camera will stop working. Many people who were rude to him have reported car accidents or broken bones. Some have even died in strange accidents after visiting him. Today, Robert sits in a glass case at the Martello Museum. He still has his little stuffed dog. People from all over the world send him letters to say sorry for being mean. They hope to end his terrifying curse. The story of Mandy began in British Columbia, Canada, in 1991. A woman named Miranda owned a very old porcelain doll. The doll was made in Germany around 1910. It had a cracked face and wore baby clothes. For many years, the doll sat in a chair in the woman's house. Then, strange things started to happen. Every night, the woman woke up to a terrifying sound. She heard a baby crying in the basement. She went downstairs to look, but no one was there. She found the window open, even though she had locked it. The crying continued for many weeks. The woman felt a dark energy coming from the doll. She decided she could not keep it anymore. She took the doll to the Quesnel Museum. She told the staff about the crying. As soon as Mandy entered the museum, the woman's house became quiet. However, the museum began to have problems. Staff members said Mandy was a very naughty doll. They would leave their lunches in the fridge and find them hidden in drawers. Pens and papers went missing from the desks. They also found other dolls in the same display case broken into pieces. It seemed Mandy did not like to share her space. Visitors to the museum report very scary incidents. Many people say Mandy's eyes follow them as they walk. Some people try to take a photo or a video of her. Their cameras often stop working or the batteries die instantly. One visitor felt a sharp pain in their chest while standing near her. Another visitor fainted right in front of her glass case. People claim Mandy is possessed by a restless spirit of a child. They believe the doll was trapped in a dark place for a long time. Today, Mandy sits alone in a special case at the museum. She still wears her old clothes and has a creepy smile. Many believe she is a vessel for a lonely demon.
The story of the Island of the Dolls began in the 1950s in Mexico. A man named Don Julian Santana Barrera lived alone on a small island in Xochimilco. He was a quiet man who wanted to live away from other people. One morning, he found the body of a young girl in the water near his home. She had drowned in a very sad accident. Don Julian felt very guilty because he could not save her life. Soon after, he found a doll floating in the same water. He believed the doll belonged to the dead girl. He hung the doll from a tree to show respect to her spirit. Don Julian soon realized that one doll was not enough. He claimed he could hear the girl screaming and crying in the dark. He felt a dark energy following him around the island. To protect himself, he began to collect old dolls from the trash and the canals. He hung hundreds of dolls from the trees all over the island. Many of the dolls were broken. Some had no arms or legs, and others had no eyes. Over many years, the island became a forest of decaying plastic and wood. It looked like a graveyard for toys. In 2001, a terrifying incident happened. Don Julian was found dead by his nephew. He had drowned in the exact same spot where he found the young girl 50 years before. People believe the spirit of the girl finally took him. Since his death, the island has become a very scary place for tourists. Visitors claim the dolls whisper to each other at night. Some people have seen the dolls move their heads and open their eyes. They say the dolls watch every step you take on the island. Local people believe a demon has taken over the dolls to trap souls. Today, the island remains a famous haunted site. Many people feel a heavy curse when they step onto the land.
The story of Peggy began in England in 2014. A paranormal investigator named Jane Harris received a doll from a very scared woman. The previous owner said the doll was causing terrible nightmares. She also claimed the doll made her feel very ill every time she was in the same room. The woman tried to get rid of the doll several times, but it always seemed to bring bad luck back to her home. She finally gave the doll to Jane to study. Jane soon realized that Peggy was not like any other haunted object she had ever seen. Peggy became famous because of a very terrifying and unique power. Most haunted dolls only hurt people who are near them. Peggy is different because she can hurt people through a computer screen. In 2015, Jane posted a video and photos of Peggy online.
Thousands of people around the world reported becoming very sick instantly. Over 80 people claimed they suffered from intense chest pains and breathing problems. Others said they had sudden, pounding headaches that lasted for days. One woman even claimed she had a heart attack after looking into Peggy's blue eyes in a photograph. Many psychics have visited Peggy to understand her dark energy. They believe the doll is possessed by a restless and angry spirit. This spirit was likely a woman born in London in the 1940s. The spirit reportedly hates priests, cats, and anyone who mocks her. People claim that Peggy uses her spirit to reach out and touch the lives of strangers. They believe she carries a modern curse that travels through the internet. Because of these dangerous incidents, Peggy is now kept in a secret and safe location. Today, Peggy sits in a special wooden box lined with sage to keep her quiet. Visitors are warned never to look directly into her eyes for too long. No one knows how many people have truly suffered because of her image. Many believe she is a vessel for a powerful demon that wants to spread fear.
The story of Okiku began in Japan in 1918. A young boy named Eikichi Suzuki was 17 years old. He went to a famous shopping street in Sapporo to find a gift. He bought a beautiful doll for his 2-year-old sister. The sister was also named Okiku. The doll wore a traditional kimono and had short black hair. Little Okiku loved the doll very much. She played with it every single day. She took the doll everywhere she went. Sadly, the little girl became very sick 1 year later. She died of a high fever in 1919. The family was heartbroken by her death. The family placed the doll on their private altar to remember their daughter. They prayed to the doll every morning. Soon, they noticed something impossible. The doll's hair was getting longer. When Eikichi bought the doll, the hair reached the jawline. Now the hair was touching the doll's shoulders. The family believed the spirit of their daughter lived inside the doll. They began to trim the hair regularly. However, no matter how many times they cut it, the hair grew back. It never stopped growing. In 1938, the family moved away. They decided to give the doll to the Monenji Temple in Iwamizawa. They told the priest about the strange hair. The priest saw it for himself and was amazed. He placed the doll in a wooden box on the temple altar. Since then, the priest has trimmed the hair many times. Scientists once studied the hair from the doll. They claimed the hair is real human hair. Some people say the doll's mouth is slowly opening. They say you can see tiny white teeth growing inside. No one has died directly from the doll, but people feel a heavy presence near her. Visitors say her eyes follow them around the room. Today, the doll remains in the temple. Priests continue to cut her hair to keep her neat. Many believe the doll is a vessel for a restless soul.
The story of Letta began in Wagga Wagga, Australia in 1972. A man named Kerry Walton lived in an old, empty house. He wanted to fix the building. One day, he looked under the wooden floorboards. He found a very old wooden doll sitting in the dark. The doll was about 200 years old. It was a marionette with a painted face and wild hair. Kerry decided to take the doll home. He named the doll Letta. He chose this name because the doll seemed to move and whisper, "Letta me out." This was the first terrifying sign. Kerry soon realized that Letta was not a normal toy. The doll was made with real human hair and a human scalp. When Letta was in a room, animals changed their behavior. Kerry's dogs would growl and try to bite the doll. They were very afraid of it. Even humans felt strange near Letta.
Many people reported feeling sudden sadness or deep pain in their hearts. Some visitors even fainted or became physically sick. They felt a heavy, dark energy surrounding the wooden figure. This energy was very strong and scary. The doll also moved on its own. Carrie would leave Letta in the living room and find it in the kitchen. Sometimes the doll would shift its position in its chair while people were watching. One night, Carrie heard a loud screaming sound coming from the hallway. He found the doll sitting alone, and the screaming stopped. People believe the doll holds the spirit of a young boy who drowned many years ago. They say a traveling circus performer made the doll to keep the boy's soul inside. Today, Letta remains with Carrie Walton. He has tried to sell the doll, but he could never go through with it. He says the doll will not let him leave. Some claim the doll is a demon, while others think it is a cursed object. While no one has died yet, the fear is real. People believe the doll carries a heavy burden of grief.
The story of Harold began in 2003 on a website called eBay. He was the first doll ever sold with a warning that he was truly haunted. A man bought the doll at a flea market in Florida. The seller told him the doll was very dangerous and had caused many problems. The man did not believe the seller at first. He took the doll home and put it in his bedroom. This was a very big mistake. Within a few days, the man started to hear strange noises. He heard a baby crying and a deep, dry coughing sound coming from the corner of the room. The man soon noticed that Harold was moving on his own. He would leave the doll on a shelf and find it sitting on the floor. One morning, the man woke up and found his cat had died suddenly. He felt a very dark energy surrounding the doll. He began to suffer from terrible migraines that would not go away. He felt like something was squeezing his head every time he looked at Harold. The man was so scared that he put the doll in a plastic bag and hid it in his basement. Even in the dark, the man could hear the doll scratching at the bag. Many people believe Harold is a vessel for a very dark demon. One owner claimed that 2 of his friends died in strange accidents shortly after meeting the doll. Another person reported a serious lung illness that started the day Harold arrived at their house. People claim that Harold can change his facial expressions. Sometimes he looks sad, but other times he looks very angry and evil. Some say his skin feels like real human flesh instead of old wood and cloth. Today, Harold is kept in a locked box in a secret location. He is often studied by paranormal experts who are afraid to touch him. Many people believe a curse follows anyone who owns him. They say the demon inside Harold wants to cause pain and death. Even looking at a video of Harold can make some people feel very sick. He remains one of the most terrifying dolls in the world. The story of Joliet began many years ago in a small town. This doll has been in the same family for 4 generations. It is a very beautiful doll with a soft face and pretty hair. However, it carries a very dark and terrifying secret. The doll was given to a great-grandmother as a gift from a friend who was very jealous. This friend put a heavy curse on the doll before giving it away. Since that day, every woman in the family has followed a very sad and scary pattern. This pattern has never been broken in over 100 years. The curse of Joliet is very specific and very cruel. Every daughter who inherits the doll gives birth to 2 children. One child is always a girl, and the other is always a boy. Tragically, the baby boy always dies on his 3rd day of life. This has happened to the great-grandmother, the grandmother, and the mother. The current owner is a woman named Anna. She also lost her infant son on his third day. This is why the family believes Joliet is a vessel for a very powerful demon. They believe the doll traps the souls of these lost sons. The family claims they can hear the doll making noises at night. They hear the sounds of many different babies crying and giggling coming from the doll's mouth. Sometimes they hear a tiny gasp for air in the dark. The most terrifying incident happened when Anna left the doll in a nursery. She found the doll sitting in the empty crib. The doll's chest was moving up and down as if it were breathing. Many people believe the doll uses the energy of the dead children to stay active. They say the spirits of the boys are stuck inside the plastic body forever.
Today, Joliet stays with Anna. She refuses to get rid of the doll. She believes that if she throws it away, the souls of her ancestors will be lost. She treats the doll with great care and love. Visitors say the doll's eyes look very human and very sad. Many believe the curse will continue for many more years. The demon inside Joliet is waiting for the next generation to be born. The story of Sarita began in the city of Lima, Peru. She is known across the world as the Blonde Devil. This doll was a gift to a family with 3 children. At first, the doll looked very sweet and innocent. She had blonde hair and big blue eyes. However, the family soon realized that something was very wrong. The doll began to move on her own every night. The mother would place Sarita on a chair in the living room. In the morning, she would find the doll sitting on the kitchen table or near the children's beds. The most terrifying incident happened when the family heard music in the middle of the night. They went into the room and found Sarita playing a recording of a religious prayer. The doll was singing "Our Father" over and over again. The scary part was that the doll had no batteries inside her. The family removed the battery pack, but the doll continued to pray and talk in a high voice. The children began to wake up with deep scratches and purple bruises on their arms. They told their mother that the doll would crawl onto their beds at night and watch them sleep. A paranormal investigator was called to the house to help. He set up a camera to watch Sarita while the family slept. The video showed the doll moving her head and blinking her eyes. Then, the doll slowly lifted her arm and pointed at the camera. Shortly after this, the family experienced a string of bad luck. The father lost his job, and the house caught fire for no reason. People believe Sarita is possessed by a demon that hates symbols of peace. They claim she uses her angelic look to hide a very dark and violent spirit. Today, Sarita is kept in a glass box in the family home. They are too afraid to throw her away because they believe the demon will follow them. Many people who see photos of Sarita claim they feel a cold wind in their room. They believe the Blonde Devil carries a curse that can never be broken.
When my brother and I were 10 and 12, our family went on a hike through the cemetery and into the woods not far from our house. My brother and I would explore these woods every day. We even camped in them before. We knew them like the back of our hands. Anyway, as the family hit our usual spot by the creek halfway through, my brother and I said we would be back in a few. We wanted to wander off further up the creek. So we did. We came across a very large hill we had never seen before. It was littered with what looked like someone's worldly possessions. It was as if they turned a house upside down, shook out the contents, took the house, and left. There were tons of painted X's on the trees,
showing someone intended to cut them down at some point. We poked around for a few minutes when we thought we heard our mom hollering at us. So we turned tail and walked maybe 20 feet back down the hill to where our parents were. The entire encounter was maybe 45 minutes long on our end. As soon as our mom saw us, we got the beating of a lifetime. We had actually been gone almost 4 hours. She never saw us walk up any hill and remembered seeing us meandering down the straight path by the creek, not turning up a hill that was 20 feet away. She, her husband, and our other brother combed the woods for over 4 hours, screaming our names, and couldn't find hide nor hair of us. We pleaded our case and even tried showing her the hill. Surely she was messing with us. So we stomped up to the turnoff for the hill and it was gone. It was nowhere to be seen. For years, we explored the woods, determined to find that hill. We covered miles and miles of off-path woods. As we got older, we mapped it out. To this day, that hill does not exist. We never found it again. We never found the weird furniture, toys, clothes, and other household items that were scattered across the hill. And we never met anyone in the area that had a clue about the hill. We probably just wandered way further than we meant to, but I always found it weird that we never found the hill again, especially since we only walked about 20 feet to get there.
Many years ago, my two best friends and I decided to go for a day of mountain biking at Snowshoe in southern West Virginia. Now, this was way before the days of GPS, so we were kind of doing this by some half-assed directions and an old map. But the point is, we got very lost. Sometime along the way, we ended up in this very tiny little town, and we figured we would ask for directions. It was absolutely deserted. I am talking not a single soul to be seen anywhere. We parked the truck and split up, looking for anyone. Now, this was at around 9 to 10 a.m., so not exactly the ass crack of dawn, mind you. We went into the post office. Nobody. We went into the only bar in town, which was unlocked and unattended with music playing, but not a single soul was present. We went business to business and walked the streets. After about 25 minutes, we finally found one old guy who just seemed to appear out of nowhere in the middle of town, walking alone. The first question we asked him wasn't even for directions. It was, "Where the hell is everyone?" He replied, "Well, I guess folks round here don't get up much till round noon." We asked him for directions to Snowshoe, and he pointed to the road we came in on, said to go that way about 10 miles and make a right, and we would find the interstate. We left quickly. We all had a very bad sense of unease about the whole thing. As we left, we were about 5 miles down the road and hit a lady dressed up in a state road uniform, standing in the middle of a very long straightaway, holding a stop sign. When we approached her, she turned the sign from slow to stop.
We asked what was going on. She stated that there was road construction ahead. We told her what had just happened back in the town, and she just kind of laughed and said those people in that town are kind of strange, but she let it slide. So we actually started talking to her while we waited for a line of traffic to come by from the opposite direction. We ended up talking to her for about 45 minutes to an hour, just shooting the shit. Kinda got lost in the conversation. Not one single vehicle ever approached from the other direction or behind us. Eventually she said, "Well, I guess it's clear now and y'all can go ahead," and slowly turned the sign from stop to slow and motioned for us to go ahead. We went straight ahead, the only direction you could possibly go for the next 30 some odd miles, and didn't see any signs of construction, state road workers, or maintenance going on at all. She had no vehicle. We figured she was a flag woman dropped off by some crew up ahead. After the encounter with the town and this woman, we had enough and called it quits. We turned on the interstate as soon as we found it and headed north and home. Every single one of us still remembers this whole encounter in vivid detail to this day. I asked my friend about it actually about 3 months ago at his wedding, and it still freaks him out to no end.
This story takes place in the mid-90s, a time before widely used cell phones and GPS. My 2 best friends and I, freshly able to drive, decided we would head out on a Saturday to a water park in southern Missouri, about a 3-hour drive from our hometown in northwest Arkansas. We had never been before and just used road maps to get there. We had a pretty fantastic time, but as the sun started to reach the tree line, we thought we ought to head home. It is about 7 o'clock and we miss a turn, but my friend Paul, who was navigating, said not to worry. Another turn was coming up that would get us there just as fast. The next turn took us from detoured to completely lost. By 8 o'clock, we are on a road that seemed to be lacking in informative road signs and 0 lights. We finally see a gas station and are relieved to get some directions as well as some gas. My friend Taylor and I go inside while Paul pumps the gas. We come inside and a very friendly old man in his early 60s gives us a very large grin and says, "Well, hello there." It was very Foghorn Leghorn-esque. He looked like an extreme hillbilly but was very pleasant. We explained that we were needing gas and wanted to fill up. He explained that he was about to shut down for the night, but would be happy to oblige us. He then said something I will never forget. "You have to make haste though. Tonight is buffer night." Taylor and I looked at each other and shared an awkward look. We asked him if he could point out our location on the road map. While he was finding it, 2 people entered the shop from the back and called out for the old man. He said he was up front. The 2 approached us, a man and a woman, and at first looked confused. Then, as though hit with an epiphany, they smiled. They asked the old man, "Are these the guests tonight?" He shot them a look and said, "No, these are some lost children." The way he said "children" caused the hairs on my neck to stand up. I am not sure why. They looked at us and said, "The 3 of you should make haste, because tonight is buffer night." 2 things scared the shit out of me right then. The first was how they knew about Paul pumping gas out front when they came from the back. And the second was that they repeated the old man verbatim. We clarified the directions to get back on a main highway and paid for the gas without waiting for change. Taylor and I booked it out of the gas station to find Paul already in the passenger seat. When we got into the car, we were nearly airborne from the speed we took off. Before we could say anything, Paul told us about how 3 men from across the street stood under a tree, just watching him. He waved, but they did not move a muscle. We just drove as fast as we could until we got back to the highway. To this day, I still have a nightmare every so often about that gas station and what my imagination has twisted Buffer Night into being. I still do not know what they meant by it.
Near my hometown, there was a hiking trail that people visited very infrequently. It was along the side of the Niagara Escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs and some very shallow caves that you could crawl around in. I went with some friends when I was 19 or 20, and we were crawling around and found a cave that went pretty deep. We had never been in there before, had never even seen it before. So we pushed forward and decided to check it out, even though we had no flashlights, and this was when cell phones did not really have a flashlight function. We stepped into the cave and it was easily 20 to 30 degrees cooler than outside. Upon looking around with whatever light we had, we noticed it was really clean inside the cave, as in it did not have beer cans littered everywhere like all the other small caves did. While in there, we got a really eerie feeling after being in there shortly, hearing weird and strange things, feeling like we were being touched, poked, and pulled, and not having any way to figure out who was doing it because it was too dark. We were just using lighters to see what was around us. We were convinced one of us was messing with the others, although anytime we sparked up a lighter, we were all decently far apart. We decided to hightail it out of there after only a few minutes, convinced to come back with flashlights. We came out to see that it was now dusk outside. When we entered, it was midday. Somehow we had lost roughly 3 hours inside of this cave. We went back with flashlights the next week, but have never been able to find this cave again. Not a single trace of it.
In the 7th grade, I had a friend who lived near a beach on a bay of Lake Michigan. One day in early May, it reached 70 degrees, nearly unheard of for that time of year in northern Wisconsin. My two friends, including the beach friend, excitedly rode our bikes down to the beach to maybe dip our toes in, expecting still frigid waters, and then to tan for the rest of the afternoon. The water, though, was surprisingly warm, like bathwater warm. In this particular area of the bay, the water was shallow for about a half-mile out, and we joyously splashed around, wading deeper and deeper until we were about chest deep. As we dunked each other and swam with abandon, I started to feel sick. Bad headache, nausea, wobbly. Just then, my other two friends mentioned that they also felt sick. We headed back to shore, nearly crawling by the time we got out. The three of us collapsed under a tree and fell asleep for 2-ish hours. When we woke up, we talked about how weird it was. I dipped my toe back in the water, and it was freezing cold. To this day, I have no idea what was in there. I do know that there is a chemical plant in town that used to manufacture things like Agent Orange, and that their practices were known to be less than environmentally conscious. I have never touched that water since. This happened to a friend of mine about 20 years ago. He had been working as an installer of double-glazed windows and would often find himself traveling with a crew all over Kent and the southeast of the UK. One job he was doing was not all that far from home, so they decided to drive home instead of staying over in a B&B.
They set off home quite late in the evening, and it was already dark. There was not much on the roads, and it was pretty cold, so not many pedestrians were about. They were driving along one fairly straight bit of road when they passed through a small, unremarkable village. It had the usual things like a dimly lit pub and a corner shop, but little else other than a few quiet cottages. About 5 minutes later, a couple of his crew members were complaining that they really needed a drink, and there must be a pub around somewhere. He suggested that they turn around and go back to the village. They turned the van around, drove back the way they came, and found nothing. There was no village there. It was just empty, dark fields. There were no turnoffs, so they could not have been mistaken about the path. It was just one straight, lonely road. They sat in the car in silence, terrified by the realization that the village had simply ceased to exist, leaving them with no explanation for what they had just driven through.
When I was 13 years old, my dad and I bicycled the Natchez Trace Parkway from Mississippi up to Nashville, Tennessee, over the course of a week. Even though I complained about the difficulty, it was a great trip with some amazing bonding. I still cannot believe my mother let me go. This would have been the late 90s. The most interesting story on the journey comes from the day from Belmont, Mississippi to Waynesboro, Tennessee. The previous day we had ridden further than we expected because we could not find a motel room. Needless to say, we were a little tired. It is a good 75 miles to Waynesboro, but our tour guide said a small motor lodge would be available. The terrain was rolling hills, so we were ready to be done. We got off the parkway and went about 4 miles west. This place was just an old motor lodge along US 64. It looked straight out of the 50s, with a pickup and a semi-bobtail parked out front. It looked closed, and we were worried. But we walked in, and a couple was at the window ready to get us a room. They even had a small diner they were trying to open. We took a room, and we were the only ones there besides the trucker. What a dump. The walls were faux wood. The carpet was orange shag from the 50s. The beds were hard. It was 95 degrees in the room with no AC. We turned on the window unit, took cold showers, and went to dinner. The folks running the place were wonderful. They had bought the motel days prior. The husband tried to set up a karaoke machine, but it was broken. I fixed it, and then the power went out. The couple brought out candles. We talked in the dark, then said our goodnights. The next morning, we had breakfast and left. A few days later, we stopped by again to say hi. The place was closed and locked up. It has long since been demolished. I know the place failed, but they tried, and they were gracious hosts. I was driving through Illinois to get to Chicago about a decade ago with a group of friends, and we stopped at a Taco Bell. The first thing we noticed was that the workers were acting very odd. Everything they said was monotone and rehearsed. After sitting in this fairly busy restaurant for a bit, we all looked at each other at the same time as we realized that none of the conversations happening around us made any sense. The people were speaking, and it was English, but the sentences were not logical. They were just saying words at each other. We did not say much about it until we got outside. At that point, we all freaked out, confirmed each other's experiences at once, and got the hell out of there. We jokingly refer to that place as the NPC Training Center, since the people did not seem to be real, or they were learning how to be human or something. Still, it freaks me out.